Okay, folks. So a bit of a preamble to this episode, just in view of who I'm interviewing. So just to give you a bit of background, today's episode, I'm speaking to Christina Smith. Now, she's a representative of the Enhanced Games. Now, you may have heard about the Enhanced Games. So basically, it's like the opposite of the Olympics in some ways, although she'd probably disagree with me on that point. But basically, the way that the Olympics have always drug tested and sports have always drug tested and tested for performance enhancing drugs, the Enhanced Games is thrown all that out the window basically, and they're going to put on a set of games next year. I think it is. We'll find out in this episode. So you might be thinking, what does this have to do with trail running? Well, they are having running events in the Enhanced Games, and I'm going to ask whether eventually trail running might end up in there or some form of long distance running. We'll find out about the events, but also because at the moment I'm writing an article about the prevalence of doping in ultra running. So this might be sort of come as a surprise to people, might not. I interviewed a coach. I'm not going to say who it is, but that coach told me that somebody who's very prevalent in trail and ultra running and has a very long career, he knew for a fact that he had used, whether he still was, had used in the past performance enhancing drugs during ultra running training and races. Now, this came as like a massive shock to me, but I thought maybe it needs a bit more investigation. So I'm writing this article. I know that Jason Coop, if you listen to the Coop, is on it soon about the prevalence of doping in ultra running and whether our sport is as clean as we hope that it always was. So part of that's why I'm sort of explaining why I'm interviewing this person. I'm trying to get some more information about this world of doping that exists and definitely exists, doesn't it? We know that is a fact. So I'm going to find out her opinions on what the Enhanced Games is trying to do, and will it be a benefit or will it cause harm to the sports that ultimately we love, like running and trail running? So, okay, so if I can find the right button, and we'll pause recording and see you on the other side. See you in just a moment. Okay, so we are resumed recording. So official welcome. So welcome to the Ultra Running Sam podcast, Christina Smith.
Thank you
Hello.
so much. It's been honestly, it's so nice to see you finally.
Yes, we've had quite a lot of correspondence, haven't we, trying to get this arranged, and we thought that we'd finally got everything sorted and in place, and we've got a time set and everything, and then Canada decides to change its clocks this week, and you were sat there at 2 p.m. our time. What that would have been 8 a.m. your time, would that have been 8 a.m.? Yeah, waiting for the podcast to start, and I was still on my way home from work, so thinking it was 3. We were recording at 3 o'clock, so the clocks have changed, and yeah, so that was probably a bit of an oversight. I didn't realize that Canada changed their clocks. I thought it was just the UK that did that.
Yeah, no, we have a spring forward, spring back time of year. Yeah. So it's no problem. Keeps you on your toes.
Yeah. So does that mean that you're getting some extra daylight in the evenings now then? So what are we, spring forward? Yeah. So which way round does it work? Yeah. Yeah. So
that would more that'd be lighter times. Yes.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Excellent. Right, so I've sort of for the listener and the viewer, I'd sort of did a bit of a preamble to sort of explain sort of the why we're here to talk about this. But what I do with all of my guests is sort of I want to know a bit about you and how you've come to where you were. So if you were a superhero, what would be your origin story? So what would be your background? So imagine you're a Canadian superhero. What is your background, and how did you what is your background in sport, basically? How did you get to where you are now and sort of the position that you're doing now?
Okay. Well, so I'm a pioneer Olympian in the sport of women's bobsleigh. And so by being part of that, it's ultimately changed my life. It's opened up many opportunities for doing, purposeful ventures or, in the world. And that was really where my heart was when being an athlete, because I really felt that the opportunity opened up a lot of options to, to support charities, foundations, and this has come completely out of left field because they noticed on my website, or I should say on my LinkedIn, the Enhanced Games. They saw that I had interest in stem cell therapy and exosome therapy, which is a natural therapy, but it's actually illegal in Canada and some countries. So, but legal, completely legal in others. So I was very open-minded about science. And as an athlete, I was looking always to do things that were regenerative, helped me with, recovering from injuries
Mm,
or jet lag. So I had a naturopath that guided me to do things in the, natural side of things with vitamin intravenous, for example, various injected therapies like prolotherapy, neurotherapy, ozone therapy, many that
mm,
a lot of people don't know about
mm,
because they're so fixated on the pharmaceutical elements. So I was very much exploring that world. However, I didn't really know that by putting a needle in your arm, regardless of what you're putting in your body, would have been considered a method of enhancement, you
mm,
know? And so that was very shocking for me because I was very open with my Canadian Sports Center, wanting to share what I had discovered through this amazing way of recovery. And I would share it with teammates around the world that I would meet, and they actually knew about some of these therapies. The Europeans were all over this, so we were very slow at adopting this, or at least some of us. But I really feel that there's um, things that people need to be educated about, and that's the beauty of the enhanced games is all around education. So when they saw, my openness, they presented what they were doing, and it was very, it opened my mind to both sides of the spectrum, the pharmaceutical and the natural, nutraceutical, and really just really excited me because I thought, wow, this is about abolishing the stigma, bringing things to the forefront, having not only athletes, but the world educated around this, and bringing in the scientists and really creating a platform that they can be celebrated, and we can really expand, our uh, humans and there's such interest around longevity and anti-aging, and people want to live longer and healthier and have quality lives. So it's really about that education. So that's why I really was to me there was no question I wanted to be involved.
mm. It's I still find it bizarre that things like therapies that are viewed as obviously like a modality of recovery from like an injury can be viewed as something as like an advantage to like athletes. That's something that I've sort of recently listened to podcasts. I think it was Joe Rogan that was talking about. He goes on quite a bit about stem cell therapy, and I think he recommends that people go to Mexico to have that. I think something like that. There's a clinic there that does it, and these aren't he recommends that for obviously his world is like UFC fighters, And he was also sort of saying that some of the peptides that are like are scientifically proven to be amazing for recovery, for like injury recovery, are on, these lists of banned substances. When, can you sort of, I don't really understand why governing bodies are sort of saying that these things should be banned from sport, when clearly they're not there to give somebody an edge. They're just there to help somebody to recover from a sport that is like really horrific on your body, like I'd imagine UFC is for people. Why does it differ around the world with different countries having these different rules on what you can and can't use?
That's a very good discussion that we really want to open up, because in over 26 countries, anabolic steroids are permitted. It's not a banned substance. So it's a very it boggles me, because a lot of the stem cell therapies. I mean, I had to go to Mexico to get therapy on my knee, and but there's several around the world. There's Colombia and Panama, for example. So my doctor actually has to go down to Mexico, my naturopath, and bring his clients down there. So, Canada is losing out
Mm,
on keeping patients here in Canada to receive these therapies, and we're bringing, money elsewhere. And so I really think that we need to open up the minds of people and educate them, and that's actually what we were our one of our biggest goals at the House of Lords in London. I was a speaker amongst, there were 54 people in attendance, some of the greatest minds, scientists that came together to discuss human enhancement. And that was the first conference that was hosted. And so we were really hoping to, uh, stimulate the conversation, but
mm,
also Lord Stone of Blackheath was co-sponsoring this, and it was due to his interest when he heard Dr. Aaron Ping D'Souza, who is also he was co-hosting and is also the president of the Enhanced Games. He was speaking about how we need to change the narrative, change healthcare. We need to bring in a minister of human enhancement, and have somebody represent, so that the UK can be a leader in this area. They've often brought in amazing, discoveries like the World Wide Web, artificial intelligence, and they lost out because they didn't, you know,
mm,
grab it and run with it, and other countries did. So we really want to encourage, uh, countries to even consider having conferences like we hosted in London, and have their governments invite us to feature a conference around the world, in different countries, and spread the word and spread the education.
mm. Yeah, what was the response, the final result of that conference then? How was it accepted by people that were there?
Oh, it was unanimous with the people who were in attendance. It was like preaching to the converted. Like it was just amazing, whether they were from the naturopathic side to the pharmaceutical side, you know, um, it was such, it was like I was with my people,
Mm,
and for myself, I have a great interest around brain injuries. And so that was the panel in which I was on, and being able to share, my discoveries from, my sport, which I feel that most sports, I have an issue, a pandemic, of brain injuries that people are
mm,
unaware. And
mm,
so athletes, during and after their careers, suffer with symptoms and repercussions from, an aggressive career. And here they are trying to be passionate and give their all and be the entertainment for the world. And then they have to live with things that, issues that they struggle with.
Mm,
And so for myself, I really wanted to share my journey and how I discovered brain mapping, and was able to inform myself that certain areas that weren't firing correctly pertain to symptoms that I was experiencing, that I could actually start to heal and get certain faculties back. And so having that as a framework of my discussion and sharing of that day really then progressed to other scientists that were on the panel. One in particular, Dr. Kristen Willemeyer, who, has an amazing book, Biohack Your Brain, which is then elevated not only from the brain mapping and the rewiring with biotechnology, the biofeedback, I should say. She was able to educate me about nutrition, supplementation, physical fitness, hydration, all for the brain. And so it's all about the sharing that went on that day during the conference, that we really hope to expose, to the world, and to educate people that are suffering in silence, sometimes with certain things, and other times, it's a lack of awareness, that they could potentially seek alternative therapies. And it's really, I think that is where what we're doing with the enhanced games is really a revolution, not only for athletes and scientists, but it's a movement, which really is so purposeful.
mm. So it's about getting knowledge out there that I suppose has been a little bit underground, hasn't it? Because when you think of, like, I always sort of refer to they call it bro science, don't they? So they're like bodybuilders for years have had like nutrition and protein and macros and things. They've had all that sorted out. They knew exactly, for going back decades, they knew that, for bulking, they had to have more carbs. And when they were like getting into competition shape, they knew that they had to sort of cut down on the carbs and go heavy on the protein. And this is all like sort of information that it seemed like the general population didn't really know about, but behind the scenes, people that have sort of been experimenting on themselves over decades have got all this kind of background knowledge. And unless you're in that world, you don't really understand, and you're not sort of privy to those bits of information. I know that when I'm in my 40s now. When I was sort of in my 20s, I did a lot of bodybuilding, and not to any great extent, but sort of the knowledge that people had sort of in the locker room of a gym sort of thing, that they could tell you these certain things that you could do. And I didn't do anything that would be classed as illegal in this country. But they had this knowledge that seemed like it was almost behind a screen, that unless you were in there, you weren't privileged to have this information. So is this sort of part of the enhanced games goal, to get underground information out there to people about what they possibly can do in life?
Absolutely. We are taking it out of the shadows, bringing it out, because there's so much science and there's so much knowledge out there. And so much of it has been suppressed and stigmatized. And so we're really about celebrating science, bringing the scientists to conferences during our games, so that they are able to really share their breakthroughs, or their discoveries, and then provide an opportunity for athletes to be able to say, you know what, I want to be part of that study, or yes, I want to share what I'm doing. Or, maybe some will be, silent and keep things to themselves. And you know what? We honor that, because it's all about bodily autonomy, my body, my choice. We treat our athletes as adults and we encourage them, we empower them with their own decision making, but we also have parameters that we believe in, and that's FDA approved compounds. So, again, we're not policing. However, we do have a safety, full medical systems protocol that we provide for pre-competition as well as during competition to assess the athletes so that they have a full picture of what is going on within their body. And then they can be informed of things, and we also can protect them from, if they're suffering, say, some cardiac issues, we can protect them for not permitting them to compete because their safety is our priority.
Mm. Yeah, it's it's got to be a good thing ultimately, hasn't it? That sort of supervision of medical staff and scientists, because people have been using performance enhancing drugs, for as long as they've existed. And you hear, I was listening to a podcast with Lance Armstrong last week, and it was an older one that I'd not listened to, but I was sort of it was around the time that it all came out about him coming forward and saying exactly what he'd done over the years in the sport of cycling. And he was just sort of saying, with the advances of medicine and everything in that time, how people, there was a sort of, in the early days, there was a spate of cyclists that died because they'd taken too much EPO. So the thing that had come into the sport that they were all sort of jumping on because it was giving them such, great advantages with recovery and with oxygen uptake and everything. People were taking with, as endurance athletes, we tend to, and I'll group myself into this, if something's good, we want more of it, and if it works, we want to use more of it, because that's what we want. We want more all the time. So that was the problem, was that they'd sort of been given this performance enhancing drug, but there was no medical staff sort of checking on them. There was no scientist saying, you, for your body weight, you need to take this amount and make sure you don't take this. They were just sort of like guinea pigs experimenting on themselves, and ultimately they took too much, and they sort of saw the consequences of it. And it was only over time. And I think that Lance Armstrong, they had a team doctor. I think his name was Dr. Ferrari. I think it was something like that, which is, a great name for an Italian doctor. To make you go faster. And he was like overseeing the drugs that they were taking. And obviously none of that team, the US Postal team, during that time had any incident. So it's almost like people would criticize the enhanced games, wouldn't they? Definitely saying, you're promoting people taking these risks and everything. But actually, if you look at it from the other point of view, you're actually making the sport safer for them, because you're giving them that supervision and the medical backgrounds of the people supervising them, the doctors and the scientists. They will make sure that everything is supervised and everything. And so how will that practically work then? So obviously the games aren't happening yet, but there's this sort of the pre-game section. How long sort of between people coming to you and saying, I want to be involved, and then the games, how much involvement and supervision are you giving to the athletes, and what sort of time period does that work in?
Yeah, those are great questions because right now we have an amazing scientific and medical advisory board, and they're in the process of determining certain parameters of how they're going to conduct things so that everything does run smoothly and safely. So at this point, I don't know specifics.
Mm.
However, we're all about encouraging the athletes that they consult with their doctors, their clinicians, their scientists, whatever is available to them, and not to blindly, like you said, has been happening, that athletes, do it on their own. So, because anybody can Google things, but
Mm.
you don't know what comes up. You don't know you know, the support that's behind it, what evidence they have. A lot of it people believe, what they read, and that is the worst thing to do. So we're really about encouraging them to first and foremost discuss with their doctors what they're doing, so that they do have that support. But of course, during our games, we will have these full systems protocol for the athletes as well as during. So everything again during our experience with the games will be conducted very safely.
Mm.
Uh, and it's interesting what you were saying about, the athletes, if it works, they want more and, kind of thing. Well, you know, I just look at, for example, myself as an athlete, we knew that vitamin C, oh my goodness, that was so good for the body. So, you'd take the vitamin C, but man, if you took too much of it, you'd have loose bowels. So there are things that, I remember now, going through, the experience that you just spoke of, but on the natural side as well. And, but, when it comes to, say, aspirin, who reads the label? You know, most people, hopefully they do. We expect them to be responsible with their bodies. And, if it says take one or two, then that's all you should be taking.
Mm.
If they go beyond that, well, there are repercussions. There could be side effects and things. And so everything that we consume, there are repercussions with things if we exceed, go in excess. For example, alcohol,
Mm.
fast food, sugar, those don't tell me that those do not have, effects on our population. That
Mm.
it's horrific. We have a pandemic, in obesity, in type 2 diabetes, alcoholism. I mean, to think that alcohol is actually a legal substance. It has, those three categories there cause the most damage in society
Mm.
on health. And so we have so-called legalized things,
Mm.
and that now we're causing, we're showing that, oh my goodness, like, we're condoning something that we're actually trying to bring into society to talk about and to show people how to, benefit from these things that have been designed by scientists or discovered, that, have been in society but have been, you know, unknown. I mean, there's so many things. It's a beautiful world. And when you even look at the technology side, we have, Paralympians. I mean, they have technology that they wear,
Mm.
and and to think that we may have a games that has a para athlete, a disabled athlete with geared up with science, with technology against able-bodied
Mm.
athlete, you know, and who knows, we might have a robot one day, and they're all at the line. Now, wouldn't that be exciting? So it's the world is our oyster for opportunities, um, and we're designing, a new sports league for the 21st century.
Mm.
And I really see the enthusiasm that we've had such amazing responses, flooded with emails from athletes that want to participate, and beautiful stories that I hope are one day heard.
Mm.
Because there's a lot of athletes that you've never heard of, and other ones that you have heard of, Olympians, medalists, alumni. To think that science could bring back alumni to the point that, the age is not an issue, and that we may have 50, 60, 70-year-olds competing against 20-year-olds one day. Who knows? Wouldn't that be amazing?
That would definitely get the viewers in, wouldn't it? Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
As far as like the how the games are structured then. So how many sports are you going to put on, and what events will be part of? Is that still up in the air, or is there any, have you kind of decided on which sports you're going to have and what events you will have within those sports?
We actually have five categories. We have athletics, so anything track and field, aquatics, so anything in the pool, so swimming and diving. Then we have combat, which is like MMA, boxing, wrestling. And then we have gymnastics events as well as strength events, so any weightlifting.
That's
Yeah.
interesting. So have you got I was going to say, have you got a set amount of events for each one, or is that sort of still waiting to sort of finalize what events within those sports you'll have?
Yes, I right now they're in discussions as well. And those are things that actually myself and my colleagues on the Athlete Advisory Commission have been discussing. So it really depends on multiple factors, but we
Mm,
are reusing current facilities. So tier one universities, for example. So we're not wanting to, of course, build new facilities.
mm,
Uh, we're supported by three venture capitalists that are just the power behind us to enable us to be able to do what we are doing.
mm,
So we're really we're avoiding taxpayers' dollars, to
mm,
have to invest in our games, and we're really doing something exceptional by paying our athletes. So it's we respect them, we honor them, we cherish them, and we protect them, and we show gratitude through really paying them in par with, uh, Formula One, Grand Slam tennis, PGA. Like, why are they not, or
mm.
why do they get paid when Olympians don't? So
Yeah, this is always something that's always sort of baffled me, that you can have somebody that, can win gold medals for their country and then come back and have no career afterwards. They sort of disappear into obscurity because, at one point they had a career in sport, and then suddenly they're not earning money from it. They have to sort of do other things to keep themselves afloat. And then on the other hand, like you say, you've got a Formula One driver who is earning millions a years for driving a car. Then why is there that discrepancy? So is it purely to do with, so Formula One, obviously there's a lot of money involved with that sport because of sponsorship and the teams and sponsorship deals and everything from brands. Is this sort of the model that you follow in with the enhanced games then, that rather than it being like you go and you do your sport and you may get a medal and you go home and you're happy with that medal, now you're actually being rewarded for what you're doing? Is that kind of the thinking behind it then?
yes, we're looking more at the models from all these different sports, sports groups that we're we're looking at the best model for athletes, also for venture capitalists, and I think just not having the monopoly of certain sponsors at the games will be huge.
Mm,
So Formula One has multiple sponsors, as we will as well. And the only way that athletes would get any funding, training for the Olympics, is through the government, which is ultimately taxpayers' dollars.
mm,
So if you, depending on what country you come from, it may be very small to nothing, So I know that in Canada, we've just adopted um, the ability to pay the para athletes, the Paralympians, which is huge because they
mm,
deserve to be paid as well. And we have, first place. It was at least a decade that they had been paying for medals, our country, so Canada. So a gold would receive 20,000 Canadian, and then silver 15,000, and then a bronze 10,000. But they
mm,
still had to pay taxes on it. I mean, it's at least some people would say, well, it's better than a kick in the pants, you know. But when you
Can't
think
live on
about
it, can you? You can't live
part
on
of,
that. You can't live on that amount of money, can you?
no, that's just a nice pat on the back,
Mm,
for several years of of training and sacrifice. However, there's also the other side, that the other athletes that just, might miss it, or,
mm,
go and they give their best, but it wasn't their games.
mm,
Uh, those are the things that we care about. And we're also looking at, the sacrifices, like I was mentioning about illnesses and injuries and
mm,
things after the fact of, after retirement. I mean, it's terrible to think that you're discarded, and I really think that part of this evolution of our games at the enhanced games is about also honoring alumni and making sure that there's an ongoing connection with us, and also benefits for them, in their retirement, because that's an amazing thing to think, to have like a benefit package of
mm,
sorts, so we're looking into all these elements,
mm,
really to value the athletes and to make them really want to be part of our games.
mm. So it's almost like a revolution, isn't it? A revolution in sport.
Yeah, that's very much a revolution, because it's a rising up of athletes, of scientists, but it's also a coming out of athletes and scientists, because there's a lot of athletes that have been hidden, in the shadows, doing what they've been doing. And, there's been actually reports, studies done, that have revealed that 44% of Olympians have at one time been on some performance enhancement. Now, whether, we don't know which ones in particular, from the extreme ones to the less, like something, I mean, I was afraid of taking poppy seed dressing on my salad, just in case I was tested and opioids would show
Mm,
up. Oh, I mean, something like I was just, as they say in German, sauber. I was so clean in the sense of how I would eat and live, and I went, so natural to prevent having anything, happen. But I may be, I don't consider myself an exception. The athletes are very meticulous, and I think that we can learn a lot about, for example, weightlifters. Their diets, are meticulous, and there's so much that I believe that can be showcased during our games to really show how disciplined they are. And it may inspire people to be more disciplined in their lives, instead of grabbing for that hamburger, and
mm.
grabbing for the celery.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say about so like injured people in sport sort of having the same sort of equal opportunities, because there must have been like plenty of athletes that had trained for the Olympics. They've gone through like a 4 year cycle of training, only to be like injured or be ill just before the games and not be chosen for the team and things like that. But if they'd been allowed, if they'd been injured, but they'd been allowed to use certain products, not to enhance themselves, not to enhance their performance, but to just recover quickly. I think I heard somebody talking about how they've recently banned a peptide called BPC 157, which is a peptide that it speeds up recovery in like tissue damage. So if somebody's got an injury, this peptide speeds up the way that the body repairs it, and that could be the difference between somebody getting to the Olympics and or not getting to the Olympics. But it's considered to be a no-no because even though it's not performance enhancing, it's still considered like to be a banned substance. And also sort of talking from my sport, from ultra running, trail running, there's been people that, so runners that have, without them realizing, they could have been banned from the sport because they, a simple thing like a saline solution infusion close to a race, that they were dehydrated in a race, and they were given put on a drip just to rehydrate them, but under, WADA's rules or these different doping rules, that would be considered doping, even though they're not taking a drug to enhance their sport and their performance. They're just purely, it was something that was given to them by a medical staff to help them not die. All of these things just seem bizarre at times. So do you think that the sort of, the more information that comes out, the more people get to use these different modalities and these different things to be able to recover, even if they're not trying to use it for performance per se? Do you think that these discoveries are going to help the wider population of athletes sort of learn things that they can then apply? And do you think it could educate these bodies like WADA and USADA to be able to perhaps change their minds on a few things?
Do you know, that's a very good question because, for one thing, I've I think I've actually done that particular peptide that you spoke of, for example. And, my naturopath is so up on all these new things, and the moment I hear about it, I'm sharing about it, normally, to whoever needs it. So, I think that just that education is definitely what is needed. I was in the Olympics, and they stripped me of all my supplements. They basically said, "We're not endorsing any of this. Like, here's what you need to take," and they gave me a bottle of vitamins, and the thing is, they were so jam-packed that when it went in, the same way it came out. It didn't even absorb in my system. And they were a sponsor, therefore, they were the only one that we were allowed to consume, which then I actually got sick. I was just horrifically sick with the flu and everything going on. And I mean, I couldn't resort to anything but saline that they gave me to squeeze up my nose. and these multivitamins that were useless.
Mm.
And I mean, I barely was able to drag myself to the line, uh, literally like every day for 3 days in a row to qualify for my games. And then on game day, on race day, all I wished for was just give me a clear mind and the ability to think straight. And that's all I wish for. I wasn't wishing to be on the podium. Like, there was nothing about it. Was really just to survive this, and so I feel for athletes that are in those circumstances. I know many that have been there, and some that have, accidentally put something up their nose, that was, a decongestant, and that was the end of it. They were caught with a banned substance in their system, and I mean, it was purely because they wanted to breathe, you know. And so, I think that with the whole education, like you're saying, is is really, that that will, I believe, shift that mentality of WADA. Um, but it will actually, if you look at it from a different way, how will they benefit from this? Not necessarily opening up their borders. We don't know what the parameters will be. Maybe they do. I'm not sure. But if anything, they can look at the studies that we do and the research and different things, and potentially they may be able to sharpen their sword, and even get ahead of those athletes that continue to compete in the Olympics, and try to sneak through the cracks.
Mm.
And, with our studies, they may be able to be more, effective in their drug testing. Because right now things are slipping through the cracks. And whether people are turning a blind eye, I know of recently an interview that I had that the athlete actually knew about fellow athletes that would basically pay off the person who was taking the samples from them and would say, please lose that sample, and that's what would happen. So they've recently discovered that, in the clinic, in the lab, that these documents that have been filled out for these athletes are not accompanied with samples. And so they've gone missing. So now there's, a leak in the system, there where there's things that are not working effectively, evidently. So I don't know how much longer the system's going to be reliable, around the world.
Mm.
And so yeah, I just hope for progress in in all areas, and hopefully, we're on a trajectory that is, a high-speed train. There's no stopping, and we're not, if you slow down, you're going to miss it. And I know that the Olympics as well, they've pivoted. I've seen them pivot with adding new sports that are more, you know, entertaining or more so, this generation, uh,
Mm.
of interest around the younger generation. For example, we have skateboarding and even video gaming, so
Oh
they're
wow,
looking.
is that I didn't realize video gaming.
Yes, they're looking at the greater population. Where's the interest? Where's the money? Where is it coming from? And there's people that actually there's more people that view video gaming
Mm.
compared to, the NFL,
Mm.
the National Football League. So the actual population viewing these online video gamers that are playing, um, brings in so much money, plus viewership for one thing, but plus the people who watch or play the video games of certain teams, they actually go out and they buy merchandise proudly, to wear the team that they're playing.
Mm.
They're not going to a live game, but they're actually, so there's a lot of avenues that there's money to be made. And yeah, I mean, I was going to the Russian International Olympic University in 2015-16. And during that time, that was when there was discussion around video gaming. And I thought, you know what? I bet you they're going to do that. And look what they've done. So there's they know how to adapt
Mm.
or pivot. But we definitely, our business model with the enhanced games is superior. We have really looked at the bigger picture and where the gaps are and the loopholes, and we've looked at what society needs and where it's going, where science is going, because science is real.
Mm. Absolutely. Um, so just thinking about the opposition that you've had. So I saw the post about Lord Coe and his opinions on the enhanced games. Do you think that this is kind of like a knee-jerk reaction to the enhanced games because they're worried that people actually are behind this? Do you think they're sort of worried that the Olympics is going to be like a bit of an outdated like scenario eventually? Do you think that's why they're sort of or do they view it as a direct competition type of thing, or is it just that they feel that they've got the moral high ground?
Personally, I think they're worried. They are scared that we're coming fast and furiously, and we're not stopping. And but we're very different. I mean, their history, their culture, they have such deep rooted history. I mean, I'm very proud to be an Olympian. You know, I love the history. I went to the International Olympic Academy in Olympia, Greece, and oh my goodness, that was just such an amazing experience. And I would encourage any Olympian to go for that experience and to really appreciate where you come, where you came from, in a sense, and so there's so much culture, and but there's also, like we're comparing apples to oranges. This they're a classical concert and we're a rock concert. We're high octane. Are, like, I mean, we're AC/DC, like, so there's really this is people will still watch the Olympics, I'm sure,
Mm,
but if they really want to see entertainment and see a different level of excitement, it'll be with the enhanced games.
mm,
Yeah.
yeah.
But I think, they need both. They need the natural Olympics, and they also need us.
I suppose in effect, it's kind of doing them a favor anyway, isn't it? Because if you've got somebody who is, sort of hell bent on using as many performance enhancing substances as possible, then and naturally they'll just sort of drift towards the enhanced games anyway. But if you've got somebody who is wanting to stick to those guidelines and be as as natural as possible, then they'll go towards the Olympics rather than it being that you've got people in the Olympics that are pretending that they're clean and they're not. So in a way, I suppose it may help actually clean up sports by the just the existence of the enhanced games. Do you think that is something you've sort of considered?
Well, actually, we totally encourage allies to come into the enhanced games. So we're looking for people that are completely natural or claim that they're natural to be in our games as well. And there are people that, athletes that have approached us and say, I'm completely natural, but I want to go up and prove that you don't need enhanced. That's
Yeah.
that's exciting, right there. And so we're really opening up. We're encouraging allies. We're encouraging Olympians. Anybody that speaks up, that's an Olympian. We empower you. We currently have Roland Schumann, who's on our Athlete Advisory Commission, and he swims for South Africa and as an Olympian, and he'll be, competing in the Olympics in Paris. So that's right proof that you can go to both games
Mm,
right there. And when people aren't very kind and throwing words around at us and trying to bully athletes and try to make them, be afraid to potentially, realize their abilities and come and compete with us, just because somebody is spouting off, things. Um, that's unnecessary, you know. I think it's it's just, I don't know. I don't believe in that. You don't need to put people down to
mm,
rise yourself up, but that's just insecurities
mm,
personally.
mm.
And I
People have
think
got a choice as well, haven't they? People can choose to, they can choose to just sort of, I'll only watch the Olympics because that's what I believe in. Or you'll have people have the choice to watch it, and 100% people are going to want to watch the enhanced games, aren't there? There's no way that the idea of it is just like fascinates me. The fact that the the possibilities are endless, and I think people will learn a lot from it. Um, I'm interested in obviously my listeners are runners. So what have you sort of sorted for the runners as far as events and everything? Is it track and field traditional? like track events, or is there going to be a marathon? Could there be an ultra marathon?
Yeah, that's all possible. We're not revealing this quite yet, but your interest and your excitement very well could come to fruition, with hearing about this. So it's really, at the end of the day, it's also we rely on the athletes that reach out to us to determine how many people will be able to, fill categories, and who knows, you never know. This is a new experience. We do have hundreds of athletes, so I don't see that as being an issue at this point. But to determine specifically, I wouldn't be able to know that at this time.
Mhm.
Yeah. But we are having a big announcement on Monday, on March 18th.
Okay.
Uh, so look forward to something. And if anybody wants updated news and to keep in the loop with us, it's best to go to enhance.org, and you can put in your email. And so you'll receive all of our emails. And yeah, it's very exciting.
It is exciting. Are you still actively looking for athletes then? So if if my listeners and viewers are watching this, listening to this, and thinking I would like to have a go at something, is that the best thing for them to do? Is to get on the website, and can they still apply, or have you got enough athletes? What's the scenario?
Oh, definitely. We're turning nobody away, And so for sure, and I encourage anybody that knows somebody, or whether it's themselves, or, and also, like I said, alumni. They're also, there's no reason why they can't come out of retirement. We've just had James Magnuson, Australian swimmer, who has challenged us that if he breaks or I should say, when he breaks the world record, uh, that he receives $1 million, and said that he would use performance enhancements if done safely and with guidance. And so we've said, absolutely, let's do this. So there's an Olympian that has come out of retirement that is, really showing what others could as well do, and as well, be funded, be rewarded. We're looking for people who feel that they can break world records, and we will pay for that. So it's an exciting time. Like and this new movement that we're creating, and I really feel that uh, there's going to be a real coming out of unexpected gems from the gym. And it's almost like The Voice. The Idol, they have, do you guys have
Yeah,
UK
yeah, yeah. So it would have been. But
British?
I think originally it was Pop Idol. It was called in the UK. Yeah, and then it changed. Didn't it? What did it change to? And then I can't remember what it was changed to. Then, yeah, Simon Cowell, and he's taken that show around the world, hasn't he?
Yeah. So we're looking to find those diamonds, and we really feel that like once we find them, we'll look after them.
Mm. It's interesting. I'll be interested to see any information that comes out about running and the sort of things that people, because it seems, because in my position as a podcaster, I've interviewed people, and people have said things to me sort of on the record and off the record about, in the preamble to this episode, I I sort of revealed for the first time that I'd interviewed a fairly famous ultra running coach, and he'd said to me that he knew of a very high profile ultra runner who he knew had used performance enhancing drugs. Obviously, I wouldn't reveal who that was, obviously. But at the time, it really shocked me because I'd viewed my sport of ultra running and trail running as being quite a pure sport, and probably naively thinking that people don't use performance enhancing drugs because it's not tested for very often. I think some of the big races like Western States in the US, that's a race where they are drug tested there. UTMB and other big events where they have drug testing, but there's so many races in the UK and Europe and around the world that there's no testing done at. So logic would say that there must be people out there that are using performance enhancing drugs and ultra running. But so for me, I'd like to find out, if people come forward and say, yes, I'm an ultra runner and I use this and it helps me with my performance. Whether anybody would do that, I don't know. But I just find it like fascinating to think that somebody could, and we could find out that sort of information.
Well, if we remove the stigma, there's going to be a lot of proud people sharing these things, you know? And I mean, in Canada, they removed the stigma, or it's in progress. But they permit now cannabis
Mm.
in Canada. And that's huge. I mean, oh my goodness, I never ever thought that that would happen. And all of a sudden it did. And now the cool thing is that we're able to see and conduct science
Mm.
research around it, and people are able to realize that it helps with inflammation or pain management, or it's certain methods of using cannabis they've claimed can help with cancer and
Yes. Yeah.
reduce tumors. And I mean, it's amazing that this thing has been suppressed in
Mm.
society.
Mm.
And of course, people
Good
associate
times.
with recreational, use and stuff, whereas there's so many people that have been suffering in silence, but still being able to, thank goodness, they've been able to, source out. But unfortunately, they felt like a criminal trying to
Mm.
take away their pain that they were suffering with, or whatever it may
Mm.
be. So it's I think it's something like that now, that um we hope that this opens up that Pandora's box. And yes, there's going to be a lot of, information that comes from it, and good, bad, and ugly.
Mm.
But you know what? Talk about it, and don't make it an act of rebellion, you know, um, because that's what happens, with the younger generation when something is illegal, or even the older generation, that they want to do things like that. And so, I mean, Hollywood has been in this space for decades. And, people are like, oh my goodness, how is she still going and looking as good as she is? Or, or he is, And I think it's about really revealing the secrets.
Mm.
And that's exciting. It's and more people will be able to live a full life, and prevent potentially illnesses
Mm.
and injuries.
Mm.
And so we're gonna really change the face of the world by elevating this attention and exposing what we're discovering. Yeah,
It's
so
interesting you say about Canada and cannabis, because before we were recording, I was saying how my brother lives on Vancouver Island, and some of the listeners will probably know that he's been suffering with esophageal cancer for the past sort of 3 years. But cannabis was one of the treatments that he used straight away. So rather than going for chemo and all of the really aggressive treatments, he actually preferred to use cannabis as his preferred mode of treatment, and it managed to keep so he had a tumor that developed. He used cannabis straight away, and it actually shrunk the tumor down over the course of a year. And then in the end, it got to a certain point, then started to come back. So it was the doctors were his oncologists and everything. They were like absolutely amazed at the progress that he'd made by he'd refused all of the traditional treatments, and they couldn't quite believe that it had just using cannabis alone had shrunk the tumor down and sort of kept it at bay for probably about 18 months. Unfortunately, it's the type of cancer he's got is an aggressive type of cancer, and they've said that it'll keep coming back, and eventually it will get him. And he is doing like stronger treatments now, but I just think that certain things are on the earth for a reason. I believe that God put cannabis on the earth for a reason. And the fact that it helps us with all like the things you've listed, like it kills cancer cells, it helps with inflammation, all these things. There's a reason for, and most pharmaceutical drugs come from the earth anyway, don't they? Everything, nothing is produced. We don't go out to space and grab these things from a passing comet. They're all things that exist on the earth, and they've been used over the years. They've been used for medicinal purposes. Maybe then they were stigmatized and were made illegal, but I think you're absolutely right that just as like something as simple as Canada legalizing the use of cannabis can bring so much good and the destigmatize it. Do you feel that this is going to be the same effect that the enhanced games is going to have on other products that are out there?
Absolutely. Hands down. Yes. Destigmatize right across the board. That is our hope because, people need to know what's out there. Natural, pharmaceutical, and knowledge is power. Knowledge is, opens up the mind, gives people choice. And I think that that is a big thing for me, is the ability to have choice, because the fact that I had to go down to Mexico to get stem cell therapy, that's terrible. Why would I have to leave my own country to receive something like that? And there was, I don't know, I'm just so such a believer in revealing things, in transparency, open dialogue, communication, sharing. That's how we're going to solve a lot of these problems that we have. And of course, there's things that people don't want to solve because, don't tell me that throughout all these years that have gone by that they still haven't been able to, cure certain illnesses, you know, and a lot of it is around the money,
Mm.
so money can be corrupt and can corrupt the system. So we're looking at trying to create an open environment for discussion and again, empower the athlete and really send that message out to everybody in the world is your body, your choice. And we had an incident during COVID, that people had to reveal, whether they were vaccinated or not vaccinated. Well, that is not bodily autonomy right there. Like, you need to have that, be empowered with your privacy of doing what you want to do and not to have to reveal to anybody. So we're very much about celebrating choice and freedom for that, and also be able to not be vilified with choices that we make.
Mm. Well, just thinking about what are the legal sort of implications of this, because we talked about how different countries, performance enhancing drugs aren't illegal. Obviously, in the UK, they are in the various forms that they're in. How does this sort of how have you sort of considered this issue of the legality in each country? Is everybody going to go to one country to train or and compete?
We'll definitely take that into consideration when we're thinking about, venues. But at this point, there's we are following our guidelines with FDA approved compounds. However, in certain countries, um, like I had mentioned, over 26 countries have anabolic steroids, which are legal. So you never know what the future holds, of where we will be hosting and what the parameters will be in those particular countries. But we are all about, FDA approved compounds. That is our stance.
Mm.
And at the same time, we are still empowering the athlete, what they choose to do on their journey of, of greatness.
Absolutely. Well, I'm really looking forward to seeing the games,
Yeah.
how they progress, and all the attention that it's getting, and all of the the research and science that's going to come from it. I think is always going to be a benefit to the world. So I really appreciate you coming on and talking to my listeners and viewers, and I'm sure I'm going to get some questions from people on social media about this when I post it. So I appreciate you coming on and giving us your time. Thank you so much for coming on, Christina.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me, Sam. And hello to everyone out there. And hope we get a lot of views on this, because I think there's a lot of education shared today.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with that. So thanks for coming on, and bye everyone. Cheers.